Welcome everyone, and thank you so much for joining us to our info session for the 2024 Operating Support Grant for Organizations. At the Arts Foundation for Tucson and Southern Arizona, our mission is to advance artistic expression, civic participation, and equitable economic growth of our diverse community by supporting, promoting, and advocating for arts and culture in our region. We support creatives who bring art to life through funding, through our public art portfolio of investment, through promotion, and through advocacy. And of course, today we are here to talk about organizational grant funding. So we have a lot of ground to cover today, so we're going to just dig in right off the bat. The Operating Support Grant is open to 501c3 arts organizations within City of Tucson, Pima County, Southern Arizona, and tribal nations. Now, there is one exception to this. If you are an organization who is fiscally sponsored and you operate within Pima County, you are eligible to apply, but only within Pima County. This is because of our funders. The award amount for this grant program is between $5,000 and $10,000. The funding period that is covered by this funding will start July 1st, 2024, and will run through June 30th, 2025. And the due date to submit your application via submittable is Thursday, May 9th, by 11:59 p.m. Arizona time. Please don't wait till the last minute to hit submit. So eligible costs for those organizations that are within City of Tucson and Pima County, you may request funding for a variety of operational expenses. A cost share matching of funds is not required. And your funders will be City of Tucson and Pima County. For Southern Arizona arts organizations, those organizations that are outside of Pima County, you will be funded through the National Endowment for the Arts grant portfolio. And nonprofit 501c3 arts organizations within Southern Arizona may only request funding to pay for artist fees, artist contracts, or artist employment. So this is an art-centered sub-granting program focusing on hiring artists at any stage in their career. So the award amount, as we said, is between $5,000 and $10,000 for eligible expenses. No cash match is required. The final determination of the award amount will be made based on volume of eligible applications and available funds. You may request up to $10,000. The final award may be less than requested, and the grant funds are intended to support very specific operating costs only, with an emphasis towards equitable compensation to arts worker. And of course, all the funding you might receive has to be expended within the funding period. So eligible expenses, Pima County arts organizations, you can request fund for operational expenses. Southern Arizona 501c3 arts organizations may request funding to pay artist fees, artist contracts, or artist employment only. The timeline you see here, so the application cycle has opened. It will close on May 9th at 11:59 p.m. when all applications are due. The review period will be May 13 through June 12th, and the notification of awards and of your grantee letters of agreements will be sent out to you between June 19th and June 27th. And then the funding period will begin shortly after that, July 1st, 2024. And there will be a final report due August 12th, 2025. Okay, so eligible organizations. I'm going to go through all of this information just so that if something comes up, there will be a Q&A moment at the end of the presentation and we can have a moment to answer those questions in regards to eligibility. So tax exempt 501c3 or charitable arts organizations that are in good standing with the IRS and federally recognized Indian tribal governments are eligible to receive funds. Pima County arts organizations may apply with a fiscal sponsor that is in good standing with the IRS and federally recognized Indian tribal governments in order to receive funds. Fiscally sponsored organizations outside of Pima County are not eligible to apply for this funding due to restrictions from our funding sources. Now, for folks who reside and provide services in counties and regions south of the Gila River, this will include Pima, Santa Cruz, Cochise counties, and southern portions of Pinal, Yuma, Greenlee, Graham, Maricopa County, and or sovereign nations of Akchin Indian Community, sovereign nation of the Cocopa, Quechan Tribe of the Fort Yuma Indian Reservation, Gila River Indian Community, Pascua Yaqui Tribe, Tohono O'odham Nation, and San Carlos Apache Nation. If this is where you are working and serving the arts communities, you are eligible to apply. The primary mission of the applicant organization has to be to explicitly produce, present, teach, serve, or preserve through arts and culture. This is for the arts and culture sector. Applicants must have at least 1 year of artistic or cultural production or programming within Southern Arizona at the time of application. Over 51% of the arts organization's programming and general budget must be dedicated to the arts. Previous grantees must be current and in compliance with all reporting to the Arts Foundation. So if you received a grant from us recently and you have not completed a final report for that grant, you are not eligible to apply until you complete that final report. Grantees are required to create a profile for the Arts and Culture Directory within 1 month of receiving the award letter. If you have not started the process of signing up for the Arts and Culture Directory, we urge you to start that now. You only have to do it once. Grantees will be required to have an active SAM unique entity identifier number in order to accept the award and receive funds. And we will touch on this information in more detail in just a minute. Excuse me. Okay. Grantees will be required to submit a current W-9 IRS form. Grantees will be required to create a free Bill.com account to receive payment. This has to be an organizational account set up specifically to receive your organization funds. If you receive payment through Bill.com, either as an individual grantee or as an individual contractor, it's really important to make sure that whatever account is set up to receive funding on behalf of the organization is linked to the organization and not to a specific individual. Grantees will be required to complete a risk assessment by submitting a self-certification to ensure that the organization is not disbarred, suspended, nor have any other exclusions or disqualifications. Grantees will be required to provide documentation of good standing with the IRS and to ensure that there is an IRS determination as a 501c3 nonprofit, and will be asked to provide the most recent 990 within a month of receiving the award letter. Grantees will be required to disclose in writing any potential conflict of interest that may be present when conducting the funded activities. Of course, we expect you to submit a final report to the Arts Foundation within 30 days, about 4.5 weeks after the end of the funding period to document your expenses and provide a brief description of programming. And last but not least, grantees will be required to comply with all national policies, including the completion of a Section 504 self-assessment and appointing a Section 504 staff coordinator. And we will have more information for you on that, and also some resources. Okay, so who is not eligible? We just reviewed a host of eligibility requirements. For-profit entities are not eligible to receive funding. Fiscally sponsored organizations outside of Pima County are not eligible. Religious institutions or religious group-sponsored organizations whose primary purpose is the religious socialization of individuals or whose art programming exists as part of religious sermons or services, political organizations, private and nonprofit schools, except for those whose sole purpose is arts education, any division or department of municipal, county, state, or federal government, including schools, middle schools, high schools, colleges, universities, and school districts. Now, there is a potential waiver to this, but it is to a 501c3 arts organization that is deemed the sole provider of arts programming in the rural community or in tribal nation. If you feel you meet all of the other criteria except for this one, please reach out to me. Okay, so what exactly is the application flow? What are the narrative questions and what is the review criteria? When you get to the application questions themselves, the first section of the submittable application will ask you a series of eligibility questions. Then there will be an organizational profile. Then there's an organization service and activity type section. There is a narrative section, a community alignment section. Then we ask for your finances, and then there's a final disclosure and signature section. And I will actually walk you through the application at the end of this presentation. But I do want to just sort of underscore the importance of the narrative questions we will ask. There are 5 questions we ask all applicants to complete, and we ask that you answer each one of them. I would actually advise that you number them so that the panelists will be really, it will be easy for them to identify the narrative question with the evaluation criteria that they'll be assessing to score all of their applications that they will receive. The first question is, tell us how you plan to use the funds and how this will have an immediate equitable impact on your arts workforce during the funding period. Tell us how your programs have the potential to serve to reach, hire, and/or support individuals whose opportunities to experience the arts are limited by ethnicity, economics, geography, or disability. Tell us about your ability to carry out the financial and equitable responsibilities of this award, as shown by the alignment of the budget and other resources with the goals and requirements of this funding opportunity. Tell us about your arts and culture mission and the core of your organization. And finally, tell us how your organization has normalized or affirmatively advanced equity, civil rights, racial justice, and equal opportunity in its organizational culture and public programming. And the 5 evaluation criteria that panelists will look to are the potential to have an immediate impact on the arts workforce, the potential to serve, reach, hire, and/or support individuals whose opportunities to experience the arts are limited by ethnicity, by economics, by geography, or by disability. The ability to carry out an award as shown by the alignment of the budget and other resources with the goals and requirements of this funding opportunity. The significance to the arts and culture mission and core work of your organization. And then finally, what is the evidence of affirmatively advancing equity, civil rights, racial justice, and equal opportunity as part of the organizational culture. So the review process, do I sit down and score your applications? Absolutely not. We actually convene a panel of artists, arts administrators, community advocates, and cultural workers representing geographically the vast geography we serve, the artistic discipline and ethnic diversity, and then they will review, deliberate, and score the materials all applicants submit. The materials will be assessed based on the eligibility, the completeness, and the clarity based on the review criteria we publish and that we just discussed. And then the panel recommendations are then submitted for authorization to our board of directors. Now here at the Arts Foundation, we have an equity strategy that aims to identify and eliminate barriers that have prevented undercapitalized groups' full participation from the agency's programs and to strengthen equity, diversity, and inclusion in the arts and culture sector for all communities of Southern Arizona. The program is committed to a just and equitable distribution of funding. To that commitment, the Arts Foundation for Tucson and Southern Arizona will consider equity and geographic parity as part of our decision-making and will work to expand the reach of this opportunity to a broad and diverse community. Okay, so we just reviewed who can apply, what does the application look like. There are a few unallowable expenses that I think it's worth it for us to just mention. As we said, for Southern Arizona folk, artist contracts and payments to artists is really the only eligible expense. For folks who are within the city of Tucson and Pima County, operating expenses are added to payment to artists. I do want to make sure that I review with you the fact that overlapping costs are not eligible. So what is an overlapping cost? Essentially, organizations, sorry about that. So essentially, if you're receiving funding to cover one expense from a different funder, you cannot then also ask from a second funder to cover the same expenses. So you just have to make sure that as you're keeping track of your funding and who is paying for what, that there are no overlapping costs. So, for example, SAP grantees must keep documentation to show which employees are being paid from each funding source, or which artist contract is being covered by which funder and which grant. So additional unallowable expenses include artist relief programs where the funding is intended to alleviate financial hardship. Alcoholic beverages are not, we can't fund that. We can't pay for food, commercial for-profit enterprises or activities, construction, purchase, or renovation of facilities, general fundraising, general miscellaneous or contingency costs, land purchase costs, lobbying activities, mortgage interest, rental costs for home offices, awards to individuals or organizations meant to honor or recognize their achievement, social activities like receptions, parties, or galas. I know this one is kind of important to some of you. Sub-awards to replace lost revenue, travel costs, vehicle purchases, visa costs, voter registration drives or related activities, costs supported by any other federal funding, those are overlapping costs. And then expenditures related to compensation to foreign nationals when those expenditures are not in compliance with regulations issued by the U.S. Treasury Department of Foreign Asset Control. There are several other unallowable costs. This list is not comprehensive. There are a couple of links on the guidelines, and I'll show you where the full guidelines are. If you have any questions in regards to whether something you want to request funding for is unallowable, please send me an email. Okay, so I know we talked really briefly about the unique entity identifier. This used to be known as the DUNS number. SAM.gov is no longer using the DUNS number. They're transitioning all 501c3 organizations to register through SAM.gov, and then they generate what's called a unique entity identifier. Now, all grantees must have a SAM unique entity identifier number in order to receive funding. And as you saw in the timeline, it's really important that organizations who do not have a unique entity identifier now start the process of securing one. The registration can take a few weeks. And if you wait to do it until you know whether or not you're a recipient, the time that it's going to take for you to get your organization registered might be longer than the period we have for the contracting part. And if you don't sign your contract within that time frame, you forfeit the funding because we can't issue a letter of agreement. So if you don't have a SAM.gov unique entity identifier number, we recommend that you register now. Don't wait. Register now. It'll be required of all 501c3 funding. And so you just have to register once. And then once you have that number, we are able to then issue contracts, grantee contracts. It's not required to apply, but it is required to receive funding. So if you don't have one, start now. There are resources on our website that in the guidelines that walk you through that process. Okay, so we're going to go through a few appendices. This is Appendix D, frequently asked questions. So can my organization apply for the 2024 Operating Support Grant if I also received a 2024 ARPA Grants for Organization from the Arts Foundation? The answer is yes. The 2024 ARPA grant funding period has already closed and final reports were requested and submitted. So if you did your final report, you are eligible for this opportunity. Now, I did also receive a question about, folks who just applied for the 2024 START grant, which can also fund organizations. Are you eligible to receive both? I'm fairly certain the answer is no. However, I'm waiting to confirm with my ED, and I will have a final answer for you. But I think you can only receive one or the other. And we will take the panelists' recommendations for board approval tomorrow. Everyone who is funded through the 2024 STAR grant will find out between Wednesday and Thursday. So you'll know by this week whether or not you've been awarded through the STAR grant. Okay. The second question here, my organization received other ARPA Act funding. This may include funding from the Arts Foundation, National Endowment for the Arts, the City of Tucson, or Pima County. Are we eligible to apply for this grant? The answer is yes, you are eligible. Just please make sure there are no overlapping costs, right? So don't pay the same artist twice with different funding, right? My organization has not registered for the SAM unique entity identifier. Can we still apply? Yes, you are eligible to apply. However, you'll notice there's only one line here in bold. Please remember, grantee organizations must have a valid SAM unique entity identifier number to accept award funding. And the process can take longer than the timeline we have to get your signed grantee agreements and issue funding. So please register your organization to get a SAM, unique entity identifier number now. Don't wait. How can grant funds be spent? Organizations must assign expenses to specific categories in the application form. And then we expect that you will spend the funding in those categories. If you need to change an expense after the funding has been approved or issued, you need to seek a budget amendment by contacting me. And then we will make sure that the new expenses are eligible and that they are in alignment with the work that you requested funding for. What if your organization received a prior grant from Arts Foundation and you have not submitted a final report? Can you still apply? The answer is no. Only grantees who have closed out their final reports can apply for this grant. If you need help with this, please reach out to me and I can help you access those final reports so you can be in compliance and continue to receive funding from us. Question 6, our organization or collective is not formally incorporated as a nonprofit 501c3. Can we apply for a fiscal sponsor? The answer is yes and no. The answer is yes if your collective or group is fiscally sponsored within Pima County. If you are fiscally sponsored and you provide services and work outside of Pima County, you are not eligible for this funding opportunity. Okay, review process. Can you find out about the status of your application while the panel review is active? The answer is no. Once we review applications internally for completeness and for eligibility, we then release those applications to our panelists to score and review. Once that process is active, we like to safeguard the panel process, and you will not find out how your application is faring in the review process until everything is complete and the board of and our board has approved the panelists' recommendations. So what is the review process? It starts with a staff-led technical review, and then it goes to a community panel review. Those are our panelists. Arts Foundation staff, we are not part of the community panel review process. We are here really to support you and to support our panelists. Will panel feedback be available to us after? Yes, you may request aggregated feedback. Please keep in mind we are continually running grant programs, and so procuring feedback might take between 4 to 6 weeks. Financial questions. Is a cost match required for this program? The answer is no. This can be the only funding you're requesting funding for. What kind of accounting system is required to receive a grant? We expect that you will maintain a system that details the expenses that are charged to specific categories of the grant budget. This can range from a professional accounting system that's maintained by a financial professional for a large organization. But we also understand that you may be keeping receipts and invoices. You know, there might be just one person who's doing that if your organization is staff-led. So just please keep in mind that you might or might not have to turn over receipts or invoices. Just make sure that all of your records are retained for the period specified in the guidelines, which for this grant, it's about 4 years. Okay, so will we make exceptions to the deadlines for the grant application? The answer is no. Unfortunately, all applications must be submitted before the published deadline to be considered. Please don't wait till the last minute. Technical issues, we can only help you if we're in the office. And so just please make sure you're hitting submit, you know, a day in advance, a couple days in advance, at least the morning of. How do I check the status of the grant proposal I submitted? Well, you will receive a notification via email, and it'll be sent to the primary account holder of the submittable account you're using to apply. And then you'll hear from us once again after the award notification period is underway and our board has ratified grantee recommendations. So Appendix D, okay, grantee requirements. What is the SAM unique entity identifier number? We've talked about that for a while. This is the previously known DUNS number. Please make sure you get that registration going. Now, Bill.com, what is Bill.com? Bill.com is a free service. We are utilizing it to process payments. Organizations have to set up a Bill.com account in order to receive payment through direct deposit rather than as mailing checks. The reason why we're doing this is because between the time you apply, between the time that you receive funding, organizations sometimes will move. The email address, the mailing addresses can be out of date. Also, we've been made aware that there is rampant check fraud. And so this just means that your funding gets to your organization in a more direct and speedy way. Again, make sure that the Bill.com account that is set up for your organization is going to your organizational bank account rather than a private bank account. You will have to track that funding and report it. There is a link, but we sent everyone who is a grantee additional information on how to set up that Bill.com account at the time of awarding. What is the risk assessment? Because we are managing federal funding currently, we will need to complete a risk assessment of grantees to ensure that the organizations are properly equipped to comply with, manage, process, and report on how to use federal funding. We will walk all grantees through this funding. How will a grantee prove good standing with the IRS? We will ask grantees to provide their 990s or equivalent dating back to 2019. For some of you who received ARPA funding, we undertook that process for you. We'll only request the additional years since we completed the risk assessment for you. And then what is the Section 504 self-assessment? So in support of accessibility requirements and in accordance with Section 504 of the Rehabilitation Act of 1973, all grantees are required to ensure that the arts programs are access to disabled visitors and employees. So to assist grantees in their compliance with this requirement, the NEA provides a program evaluation workbook, which is designed to assist grantee staff to do a self-assessment of the accessibility of their programming. Now, we offered a webinar for our last organizational grantees, and we will make that resource available to everyone once again. And we'll also have the links to the self-assessment workbook, which is lengthy, I grant you that. But if you completed it within the last year, you only have to update it. And then you just have to designate a 504 coordinator. And again, this is only required of grantees. Okay, so we have some resources and I'll point you to where these are in the guidelines momentarily. We offer bilingual technical assistance if any of you require it. We have today's webinar. There's also a few links which are really helpful. And finally, we ask that you join the Arts Directory. This is what that page looks like. And again, you only have to do it once. If your organization is already listed, your process is complete and you don't have to undertake it again. But this will be required of all grantees. So I will now Okay, I'm gonna answer just a couple questions before I shift you away from here into our website. Let's see, there's a few questions. If applying with a fiscal sponsor and our organization is not a 501c3, so can I get a SAM UEI? Can we still apply? Yeah, if you're fiscally sponsored within Pima County, you are eligible to apply. Your fiscal sponsor must have a SAM unique entity identifier number. So they have to procure one in order for you to receive the funding, because they will have fiscal fiduciary responsibility for administering your funding, essentially. Can funding be used to pay artists who are brought by our organization to give programs in Tucson, Pima County, but who live outside Pima County or Arizona? The answer is yes. Yes. Can the Bernal Gallery at Pima Community College receive a waiver to bring visiting artists to Tucson? David, let's connect about that, because you are technically a college, unless the Bernal Gallery at Pima Community College is the only entity procuring this kind of artistic service for the community. My sense is that you are not eligible because of your because you're part of Pima Community College, and Pima Community College is not eligible to receive this funding. So I would say I don't think you're eligible. If you feel that there are other circumstances that we should connect about, let's reach out at the end of this meeting and we can schedule a time to connect. But I don't think you're eligible. Okay, if our organization is applying with a fiscal sponsor, is it us or the fiscal sponsor who fills out the bill pay? That would be the fiscal sponsor. The fiscal sponsor will receive the funding, so they have to set up that account. And then the second part of the question is, similarly, if using a fiscal sponsor, do we use our SAM, unique entity identifier, or do we still need to apply for our own? Yeah, you would use your fiscal sponsor's SAM, unique entity identifier number. Okay, if we have applied for the STAR grant, are we eligible to apply for this grant? I don't believe that you can receive both grants at the same time as an organization. However, I'm triple checking with my AD, and also we will send all notifications to awardees between this Wednesday and Thursday, so you'll know by the end of the week if it's even an issue. If you did receive the 2024 STAR grant award. Can funding be used to film artists in Tucson, Arizona as a documentary series? I mean, your organization can decide what you want to do with the funding. If you want to pay artists, I think it all depends on what you're going to use the funding for. The answer is probably yes, depending on what it is that you're seeking funding for, and also where you're located. Look to the eligible expenses in the list. Okay, let's see. Are we able to use the funds to pay artists to display their art within a pop-up? We would not be purchasing or commissioning the art, but they are heritage, craft, and community folks who are not usually paid. Yeah, I think you can pay artists for that. Yeah. For clarity, to qualify, organizations have to have 1 year of cultural production. So this is not for new programming. So your organization needs to have 1 year of arts programming under its belt. You basically have to have been in operation for a whole year prior to applying, but the work you're seeking funding for would start July 1st of next year. I don't know if that answers the question. Your organization has to have been active in Southern Arizona for a year, and the funding you're requesting for is for next year, starting next fiscal year, starting July 1st and ending June 30th, 2020. Okay, I think that's all the questions so far. I will now go to our website. Let's see. Okay, here we go. Okay, so this is a landing page for the 2024 Operating Support Grant for Organizations. Basically, if you come to our website, it has a logo for the grant. It tells you the grant details briefly, the due date, the budget, the eligibility. And then there are two buttons here. One is to apply and one is for the guidelines. The informational webinar will be posted here in a few days. If I open the guidelines, this is what the guidelines look like. It's really just a lengthy PDF with all of the information we just discussed and some other additional information. Here are those resources I mentioned. So if I click on, let's see, if I click on unique entity identifier registration, it takes me to this page. Which will walk you through that process. We have the overview, the timeline, the award amount, who all is eligible to receive this funding, the eligible expenses, financial record management, how to apply, what the review process is, the criteria, the different types of assistance that you can request. And then there's the bulk of the guidelines is actually question by question, everything that you will be asked to answer in the application process. And rather than reading these questions, I will actually walk you really briefly through the application process itself in Submittable. And then at the end of the document, after all of the questions are listed, we start with the appendices. So Appendix A are the unallowable expenses we discussed. Appendix B walks you through the unique entity identifier information. And there are links here to help you, to support you. And here's for a first-time applicant. There's also Appendix C, National Policy. I did not went into detail with this information. It is important, however, perhaps not fully appropriate for a brief webinar like we're having today to answer your questions. You are responsible for this information. So we encourage you to, take a few minutes and read that information. And then Appendix D, frequently asked questions. We reviewed most of the frequently asked questions we received. We skipped a few, and then I added a few that we've received specific to this grant program. Then if you click apply, this will take you to the submittable page. Okay, so if I go to submit application, it's gonna ask me to log in. So I'm gonna log in with my test account. It's gonna give me information on this grant program. It's gonna ask for your address. your city, the state. This is a primary account holder. So this is why we're switching to Bill.com. There are several places where we ask you to provide your mailing address. And you can provide a few of those. So we just want to make sure the funding is going to the right place. And then as soon as you enter that information, this will walk you through your eligibility. So in what city is your organization based? The organization category, if you say, yes, you are a 501c3, then the third question will open. If you say no, because you're not a 501c3, then the next question we will ask is if you are located within Pima County. If you are not, then you are not eligible to apply. But if you are located within Pima County, then we will ask you for that all of that fiscal sponsored information. And you can enter all of that here. So let's say you are we also ask that you verify that you reside and provide a majority of its services or programming within Southern Arizona. There was someone who asked a question who registered for this webinar. You know, they're a global organization and they were asking if they could receive funding from us. So the applicant is expected to be serving and doing work primarily within the Southern Arizona region. If you are that organization or entity and have that question, please reach out to me. Our funding is restricted by geography. So if you are a global organization, you don't really reside here, you are not eligible for this funding. The primary mission of the organization has to be arts and culture. If you are any other type of nonprofit and you do arts and culture as part of the work you do, but it is not your primary mission, then you are not eligible to receive this funding. If you have a question about that, please reach out. We'd hate to have you go through the trouble of completing the entire application and then finding out that you were not eligible at the time of technical review. The arts budget needs to comprise 51% of the organization's public programming and general budget. Again, if you have any questions about this, please reach out via email. Programming history, you must have 1 year of programming history of arts and culture programming within Southern Arizona at the time of application. And then if you're a past grantee, if you say no, then you'll go on to the next section. But if you say yes, we're going to ask about that final report, and hopefully you can say yes to both questions. And then we'll take you to the organizational profile. This is where we ask for information related to the work that you do. So what is the legal name as it appears on the IRS filings? We know that a lot of you have a legal name and also a doing business as name. That is your public name. We ask for both of those. The mailing address of the organization, the county, the tribal nation, if you work within a tribal nation, and that is if you're working primarily within a tribal nation, not a kind of one-off program. If you have questions about that, please let me know. Your website URL, social media handle, if you care to provide that, a cover photo so that we may visually identify your organization, your tax ID number, your SAM, unique entity identifier, if you have it now. Again, if you don't have one now, please begin that registration as soon as you hit submit on this application. Primary contact, first name, last name, phone number, email, a second person that we can get a hold of, your legislative district, your federal congressional district, your City of Tucson ward, if you live within City of Tucson. And then you can continue on to section 3, which is the organization, service, and activity type. So the program summary for the grant request, like what is it that you're asking funding for? Couple sentences, 2 to 3 sentences max. Your mission statement, the year your organization was founded, incorporated, or formed, when you began providing arts and culture programming, percentage of arts-based programming that is allocated within your budget in a typical year, which of the following categories best corresponds to your general operating budget, primary discipline, and then that takes us to the narrative, which are those 5 questions we asked, we reviewed in the PowerPoint. You can write your narrative. Again, if you do, please answer all the questions and label them. You can provide a video submission if you're going to be narrating your answers. You can provide a link to that video. It is not required. You can type it out if that's your preferred method of communication. If you do provide a video, please know that we will not assess the quality of the video. And then work samples so that we can get to know the work of your organization. We allow about 3 minutes of review time. Please don't upload 20-minute video unless you tell us which part to view. We anticipate this is going to be a very popular grant program. So we just want to make sure that the time that panelists will be spending getting to know your organization through this application is really intentional. So give us like 3 minutes of the work you're most proud of or that is closest to your mission. And then you can describe your work sample, if it was a performance or if it was a workshop or whatever it is that you might have provided. And then community alignment. We'll ask you questions in regards to community and mission alignment, leadership and mission alignment, workforce and mission alignment. We'll ask questions about your organization's finances. So tell us when your fiscal year starts and ends. The Arts Foundation's fiscal year starts July 1st of, let's say, of this year, let's say 2024, and ends June 30th of 2025. It straddles 2 calendar years. Some organizations are on a calendar year and your fiscal year starts January 1st and ends December, the last day of December. So just tell us which it is so that we get a sense for how it is that you're going to be spending your funding. And then we'll be asking your income for fiscal year 21, fiscal year 22, fiscal year 23, and those corresponding expenses. The requested award amount. Tell us about your eligible expenses. Again, there were a few expenses that are not eligible. Please remember, as much as we wish we could, we are unable to pay for food. That's a big one. We get it every grant almost. And then please upload your organization's most current budget. Then we go to the disclosure and signature, which basically we ask that you certify that you do not discriminate. We request media release of the materials you provided. You can say no if you wish. But this is really how we would prepare our press release, should you be recommended for funding. And then we ask how you found out about this grant. If you are interested in other opportunities, we ask that you acknowledge that you are authorized to submit this application. And then finally, we asked for the financial authorized organization representative who will receive and sign your grant letter of agreement. This is the person who will sign the contract, set up your Build.com account, and be responsible for the financial administration of that funding at the time of the award. You can save your draft, or you can submit your application once it's all complete. Thank you so much for joining today. And we wish you a good rest of your day and happy writing. We look forward to receiving all of your applications.